The Central Bank of Bolivia has returned a loan over 300 million illegally agreed by de facto government to the International Monetary Fund. South African Health Minister announced the country will give a doses of the Oxford-Astrazeneca vaccine to the African Union. In Japan, former Olympian Seiko Hashimoto was named president of the Tokyo Olympic Organizing Committee after her predecessor, Yoshiro Mori, was forced to resign. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Janet Perez Moya from the teleSUR studios in Caracas, Venezuela. Let's begin with the news. The president of the Central Bank of Bolivia, Edwin Rojas, announced details of the return of the International Monetary Fund loan negotiated by de facto government of Yanine Áñez.
What is determined is that the Central Bank of Bolivia has established to carry out all administrative and legal actions in order to repay the credit and avoid further economic damage to the country by proceeding with the return of the resources. In this sense, and according to Law 1670, which establishes that the Central Bank of Bolivia is a financial agent of the government, to date, $351.5 million have been repaid.
The official also informed that the central bank will take legal action against those involved in the process of negotiating the loan with the International Monetary Fund.
The current administration of the Central Bank of Bolivia, in accordance with its powers and the regulations in force, will take the corresponding administrative, civil and criminal actions against the current and former civil servants who are found to be responsible due to their participation in the process of the negotiation, signing and handling of the aforementioned loan from the International Monetary Fund.
In a statement to U.S. media outlet, the Ecuadorian presidential candidate Andrés Arauz criticized the agreement made between his country and the International Monetary Fund by Lenín Moreno government, stressing that it affects the quality of life of the population.
Because we cannot accept an agreement that affects the Ecuadorian family, we cannot accept a cut in public spending, we cannot accept that dollars continue to be drained out of the Ecuadorian economy. We have to strengthen the Ecuadorian economy according to our constitution to generate credit, entrepreneurship, development opportunities for our country.
In Ecuador, the presidential candidate for the indigenous Pachakutik Party, Yaku Perez, continues to claim he was a victim of electoral fraud in the first round and has now requested the suspension of the vote count by the National Electoral Council.
We are now formally requesting the suspension of the physical and digital vote count. There has been a fraud we might get back. Experts have told us about 500,000 votes that have been taken away from us, but they say that's according to what has been checked so far. As more votes are checked, more irregularities could be discovered.
This Wednesday, Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro offered an international press conference to provide an update on the current situation in regards to the COVID-19 pandemics and the strategies to face it. President Maduro announced that Venezuela will launch its vaccination campaign against COVID-19 this Thursday using the Russian Sputnik V vaccine. In the first stage, health personnel and priority sectors will receive the vaccine, including civil servants, security force, and lawmakers. Maduro also highlighted the delays in vaccine production and the hoarding of doses by several nations. Taking into account this context, President Maduro informed that his government plans to begin large-scale vaccinations across the country in April.
Meanwhile, we approved the Sputnik V vaccine. Tomorrow, on Thursday 18, we're going to start vaccinating all health workers of the country. That's what we continue to say. If you want a vaccine, here you have it. It's important to prevent. It's fundamental in this stage of fight, of struggle against coronavirus.
President Maduro rejected the statements made by his Colombian counterpart Ivan Duque on the alleged presence of the ELN guerrilla in Venezuela and reiterated that he will defend the country from any aggression promoted by Bogota.
I've said to the armed forces of our country to answer strongly the reckless statements of Ivan Duque of Venezuela, to answer them in words and to clean and ready our army to answer if Ivan Duque dares to violate the sovereignty of Venezuela, if Ivan Duque dares to touch one single military 1 millimeter of Venezuela's territory. Take care, Ivan Duque. Respect Venezuela. Know your limits.
We will take a short break now. Follow us on Twitter at teleSUR English and Perez Moya teleSUR. We will be right back. Welcome back. South African Health Minister Zweli Kise announced the country will give doses of the Oxford-Astrazeneca COVID-19 vaccines to the African Union. Speaking to Parliament, the minister explained that the vaccine doses were offered to the African Union to distribute to those countries who have already expressed interest in acquiring the stock. The move comes after the country scrapped their use due to the efficacy concerns regarding a new variant of the virus. South Africa had secured 1 million doses of the vaccine from the Serum Institute of India and was set to receive an additional consignment of 500,000.
In South Africa. The recent announcement around the limited efficacy of the AstraZeneca vaccine, so-called Covishield, which has already been cured, was certainly disappointing. However, we are determined not to be derailed on our commitment to roll out in February. I can also just say that in discussion, we have actually involved enough dosages to be able to cover all the people that need to be covered in South Africa.
Zanzibar's first Vice President Saif Sharif Hamad, who had been undergoing treatment for COVID-19, has died at the age of 77, the government announced on Wednesday. The president of the semi-autonomous island region of Tanzania, Hussein Mwinyi, announced 7 days of mourning with the flag to be flown at half-staff. Tanzania's President John Magufuli sent a message of condolence to Mwinyi and the people of Zanzibar on the recent deaths of the leading opposition figure, who was also the chairman of the Islands for Change and Transparency Party. African leaders have taken to Twitter to express their condolence on the deaths of Zanzibar's vice president. Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Moussa Faki Mahamat, said he was deeply saddened by the news and expressed condolence to his family and the people of Zanzibar and Tanzania. The first shipment of COVID-19 vaccine arrived in El Salvador from India this Wednesday. Health Minister Francisco Alavi announced that the frontline workers will be the first to receive the shots.
The first batch of COVID-19 vaccines is arriving today in our country, a strategy that will put an end to this disease that has caused so many complications worldwide. Today, we are very happy to receive the first batch of 20,000 vaccines for the people, in order to begin with the workers on the first line, who are working hard for the health of Salvatorians.
The government of Mexico presented a formal complaint to the United Nations Security Council this Wednesday regarding the uneven distribution of COVID-19 vaccines. Foreign Secretary Marcelo Ebrard stressed that the 3/4 of the first doses of vaccines have been applied just in citizens in just 10 countries, which accounts for 60% of global GDP, while more than 100 countries haven't administered any vaccines at all. The Mexican officials stressed that the richest nations are hoarding doses to the detriment of other countries with fewer resources and called for a fair distribution through the COVAX initiative.
We urge countries to avoid the hoarding of vaccines and to accelerate the first stages of COVAX deliveries and give priority in the distribution to countries with fewer resources. Some studies even indicate that these countries will not have still widespread access by mid-2023 if the current trend continues. The data released by the executive director of the World Health Organization is alarming. 3/4 of the doses of vaccines administered in the world are concentrated in 10 countries that represent 60% of global gross domestic product. It is estimated that there are more than 100 countries in which not even one dose has been administered.
During his speech to the UN Security Council, Marcelo Ebrard pointed out that the COVAX mechanism alone is insufficient to guarantee even access to vaccines against the novel coronavirus.
It is true that the COVAX multilateral mechanism has been innovative and extraordinary, but it is also true that it has been insufficient so far and that the scenario we wanted to avoid has occurred. To date, no vaccines have been distributed by this multilateral body.
Also speaking during the UN Security Council session, the Prime Minister of Saint Vincent and the Grenadines, Ralph Gonsalves, stressed that the Caribbean community is proposing a global summit to address equitable access to COVID-19 vaccines.
We reiterate the call of the CARICOM community for a global summit in the context of the Accelerator Facilitation Council on access to COVID-19 tools to discuss equitable access to vaccines. It is the intention of the CARICOM to share with others, as needed, any amount of vaccines we receive or acquire. Political will and solidarity among all nations are crucial elements to overcome COVID-19. There is a worrying trend towards vaccine nationalism, some wealthy countries hoarding many medical supplies, such as vaccines, which only prolongs the pandemic.
Over 300,000 students returned to class in Argentine capital this Wednesday, while teachers' unions have expressed concern about the biosecurity conditions. The Ministry of Education schedule established that all students living in Buenos Aires will return to one-side class on March 2nd. Teachers' unions in the capital stress that the conditions are not suitable for their return to classrooms and have rejected the decision, with some mobilization expected to continue for 72 hours. Educators also condemn the fact that the Buenos Aires government is delegating the responsibility for implementing the necessary protocols to individual schools. In Australia, officials say on Thursday that the coronavirus vaccine rollout will begin in every state and territory on Monday.
That program begins with a focus on those who are most vulnerable, either the risk of catching COVID-19 or the consequences if they were to catch COVID-19. Every state and territory, rural and regional and urban areas will be covered. It has to start somewhere and it has to finish somewhere, but this is the beginning of the process.
We know we are asking a lot of everybody in this huge and complex task, and much of it is being done very quickly but safely. Our mantra has been we want to vaccinate Australia as safely and quickly as possible. We all want to protect our vulnerable Australians as soon as we can.
We will take another short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Former Olympian Seiko Hashimoto has been named president of the Tokyo Olympic Organizing Committee. The former Olympian replaced 83-year-old Yoshimiro Mori, who was forced to resign last week after making sexist comments about women. The move could be groundbreaking in Japan, where women are rare in the boardroom or in positions of power. The 56-year-old Hashimoto has been serving as the Olympic minister in the cabinet of Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga. Hashimoto completed in 3 Summer Olympics in cycling and in 4 Winter Olympics in speed skating. Her 7th appearance is the most by any multi-session Olympian dating from the first Modern Olympic in 1896.
From now on, I think that we, together with the new Olympic minister, must work closely with each other to become an organizing committee that is trusted by everyone in Japan and overseas. I would like to create a legacy that will create a society where people can live in harmony with each other, regardless of gender, disability, race, or sexual orientation. Taking advantage of my experience so far, as the president of the organizing committee, I will do my best to make the Tokyo Games a success.
Japanese Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga wished Hashimoto good luck and said that he hoped the organizing committee will have a fresh start as a free and open organization.
The new Tokyo 2020 Organizing Committee President Hashimoto has worked hard as the minister in charge of the Olympics and Paralympics. She will be appointed the new president, and we would like her to do her best for a safe and secure tournament that is welcomed by the people and the world. As a government, we will firmly support her. I would like Tamayo Marukawa to do her best by making the best use of your experience as the Olympic minister in charge. Also, as a woman with fresh ideas, I would like her to realize a safe and secure competition as the minister in charge. Also as the Minister of Gender Equality, and I want her to do her best to realize it in this current situation. With that in mind, I ask Marukawa to succeed Hashimoto.
Demonstrators against Myanmar military takeover returned to the streets on Thursday after a night of armed intimidation by security forces in Mandalay, the country's second biggest city. In Mandalay, protesters gathered outside the court where the chief minister for the region, South Min Maut, and former mayor Ujel Lee were due to appear. The charge against them are unclear. Overnight police rampage in a neighborhood where state railways workers are housed in an indication that the battles between protesters and the government have become increasingly focused on business and government institutions that keep the economic running. State railways workers on Sunday had called strike, joining a loosely organized civil disobedience movement that was initiated by the medical workers and its backbone of the resistance. In Yangon, Myanmar's biggest city, over 1,000 protesters at a major intersection outside the Hilden Center rallied once again to protest against the military takeover. Police security were monitoring the rally, making sure protesters did not impede vehicular traffic at the intersection. Protesters called for the release of detained leader Aung San Suu Kyi. The military seized power on February 1st, saying the takeover was necessary because Suu Kyi's government had failed to investigate fraud claims in elections her party won in a landslide. On Thursday, thousands of protesting farmers blocked trains by sitting on railroad tracks in parts of northern India to press their demands for a repeal of the new agricultural reform laws. The Joint Farmers Front organized 4-hour blockades of trains at 2,000 locations. Protesters were seen sitting on the railroad tracks in Hapur, Mondiganar, Kurukshetra, and several other places in Haryana, Punjab, and Uttar Pradesh states. Authorities deployed thousands of security force at the railroad stations and tracks to prevent any violence. Protesters carried banners and flags denouncing the laws approved by Parliament in September, which they say will leave them poorer and at the mercy of corporations.
Farmers have decided that the struggle to get these 3 laws repealed is connected to our lives. connected to a future, connected to our children, and connected to our daily bread. Either we will survive and our assets will survive, or the country won't be able to get by, as they will not get anything to eat. Even the common man will starve and die, when all the produce will go into the warehouses of corporations. Then they will sell it at any rate they want, and the common man will starve to death.
Mount Etna, Europe's most active volcano, continued to spew lava, ashes, and volcanic stone on Thursday. The eruption, which featured spectacular displays of gushing lava, forced the temporary closure of Sicily's Catania airport, a frequent occurrence when Etna is in active phase. On Tuesday, areas surrounding the crater were secure, but there were no reported injuries or deaths. Nearby residents say the eruption was unusual and that big chunks of volcanic stones carpeted the area, not just ash. Etna is a popular tourist destination, and its eruption, especially when seen at night, are spectacular to watch. Nearly 150,000 customers remain without power in and around Portland, Oregon, in the United States, nearly a week after a massive snow and ice storm swept into the Pacific Northwest. The storm took out hundreds of miles of power lines as ice-laden trees toppled. The damage through the storm in the power system was the worst in 40 years. Maria Pope, CEO of Portland General Electric, said more than 2,000 power lines were still down. At the peak of the storm, more than 300,000 customers were without power, and 5,000 power lines in the 3 substations were down. The CEO added that more than 7,000 crew members from as far away as Montana and Nevada were helping restore a power grid that could be down for at least several more days.
I'm able to run heat. You know, I got a space heater in my house. Thank God we were able to get that generator. That's what I'm saying. But yeah, that's not a lot of people have that. I went on Facebook Marketplace trying to find one. I mean, they're up there, but they're going for a lot of money, I think, right now.
We have come to the end of this news brief. You can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Janet Perez Moya. Thank you for watching.